Friends, David Paulides, CanAm Missing Project Cover Edited Edition for our video channel. We're with the infamous Huck. We just got done playing outside. She's a good girl. She's nice and soft right now. And she's going to take a little nappy. Hey, hey. That's good. That's good. Oh, she's happy. She's going to take a little nap right now. Because Dad, don't bother me. Okay, I won't. So, missing person segment today. Thanks for being here. I want to make sure that all of you are subscribed, which many of you have not been lately. So, please tune in and make sure that you're getting the subscription and your notification every week. Had another interesting rescue just the other day here in Montana. And I'm going to read you the story in the local newspaper because there's a point to it. It says, father of rescued man thanks the search team. This is in the Daily Interlake, October 3rd of this year. Ken Card wants to thank, and a big thank you to Two Bear Air, Flathead County Sheriff's Office, and Triple G Resort at Stanton Creek for their help in rescuing his son. Card owned, blah, 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 blah. Anyhow, his son Casey decided to recently visit from California. Casey wanted to float the middle fork of the Flathead in an inflatable kayak, which is fun to do. Really fun. And on September 14th, he set out at about 2 o'clock. And he was taking his inflatable kayak. Said he hit a rock and it destroyed the tubing in the kayak. He had to go ashore, tried to float it some more, it kept turning around. Casey finally gave up and decided to use the raft as a sort of shelter from the weather. And he didn't exactly know where he was other than he was in a canyon. Meanwhile, his dad was waiting and waiting and waiting. And finally decided to go for help where there was no cell service at the river take where he was out. He drove back to Stanton Creek where the manager there let him use a phone to call the Flathead County Sheriff. And Deputy Strider Claridge arrived shortly thereafter to call in Two Bear Air as it was dark at about 10 o'clock. Two Bear responded, hovered over them for a minute or two before flying upriver to look for Casey. Ken said they found him in about 3 minutes by using the rescue helicopter's infrared cameras, which can pick up human forms fairly easily in the dark. They landed on a sandbar, picked up Casey, and flew him to Two Bear Air hangar in Kalispell. He later went to Logan Health for treatment of hypothermia. Now, why did I read you that? Because I talk to you all the time about why FLIR is important. People look for others in helicopters and things using FLIR, especially in the dark, because your body puts out a heat signature. And that heat signature shows up vividly on FLIR. And it works. And I know when I talk to you about missing persons cases, everybody says, well, Dave, it never works. It never works. Just like dogs never work. Dogs never work. But they do work on normal cases. And somebody asked me the other day, well, what percentage of your cases do dogs not pick up a scent? About 99.5% of the time, dogs don't pick up a scent. And trackers don't pick up a track. On FLIR, it's almost the same sort of percentages. Now, Two Bear Air. We are so blessed here in the Flathead Valley to have Two Bear. There's a billionaire that lives in Whitefish, and he's a financier of sorts. And he wanted to do something for the valley. So he purchased a couple of the best helicopters in the world, manned them 24/7 with paramedics and pilots. They're on call 24/7 at our local airport. Deputies can call them up anytime they want, whether they're looking for a wanted person or somebody like this that fell out of a kayak on the middle fork of the Flathead. And they'll go. They're all paid for by this billionaire. No charge to anybody. It's one of the best rescue flight helicopter services in the world. They have the best FLIR. They have the best electronics on that thing in the world. What can I say? The number of people that they've saved is probably way over 1,000 by now. Great service. Great service. You want to put your money where your mouth is and do something for the world. This is it. So I thank you. So, there's only one case we're going to talk about today. It's a case I've been sitting on since the day it happened, September 17th of this year. And I've been watching it unfold. People say, well, Dave, why don't you talk about these cases earlier? Because there's a lot that can transpire. When somebody goes missing in a national park, there's a lot of things that could happen. Animal predation, maybe they want to take their own life, etc., etc. You don't know. Well, I think we've come to the point where we need to talk about this. The young man's name was Austin King. This is the wanted flyer put out by Yellowstone National Park Police. Austin was an employee of Xanterra, which is a concessionaire in national parks. They put out information during the year and they say, hey, we're looking for people to work at our park for the summer months. It's a seasonal job. Come interview. They'll have interviews in big cities. You come out, you talk to them. Sometimes they do it over Zoom, and then they give you a start date, usually in May or June. Well, Austin saw the job opening, talked to his parents about it, and they encouraged him to take it. Well, he was a resident of Winona, Minnesota, and a graduate of Winona Cotter High School. Austin was a good athlete. He played varsity hockey in Minnesota as a sophomore. You got to be pretty good for that. And he played on the team's tennis team, and he also played in a marching band. Very diverse young man. Now, I've got us many hockey stories about Minnesota. When Ben was about 14 or 15, we went out to Minnesota, played in a huge tournament. I think this place had six hockey rinks, and all going with teams from all over the United States. I think we were one of 36 teams that were invited in. And back then, with the West Coast, people didn't really respect hockey players too much, especially young ones. They didn't think anybody of any great ability came out of California and was going to play hockey. We surprised some Minnesota teams, beat them pretty bad. And there were scouts there. And they were scouting Minnesota players mainly. And they saw our team, and our team had some really good players on it. Came over and talked to the folks, and they were scouting for the NHL and the NAHL and the USHL. That's the first time that Ben and I heard about the USHL. The NAHL is a lower level league to get young men into college sports in hockey. USHL is the upper division league, and you get drafted into the USHL, and then the team, you can play for that team 1 to 3 years before a college team will pick you up on a scholarship. That's the route Ben took. USHL team saw him and immediately started scouting him from there, and scouted him all over the US and Canada. Eventually he was picked up, and he spent 2 years there before he got a scholarship to the number one team in the United States, Miami, Ohio at the time, as a defenseman. So yeah, I have a soft place in my heart for Minnesota. That's really where it got going for us. And Austin would have been one of those great Minnesota hockey kids that we played against, so I respect him a lot. Well, Austin loved the outdoors, found this job, parents gave him the endorsement. He liked to hike, and he ended up taking the job. He drove his truck and his camper out there, established himself, and started taking hikes around the greater Yellowstone area regularly. Well, it was getting near the end of his tour, his contract, and he had 7 days off, which is rare. And at the end of that 7 days, he was going to try to sign up again for next year, possibly, maybe spend some time driving home. It was a little unclear, but he explained to his family that he had this 7-day route planned off. And he planned to hike to a place called Eagle Peak at the far southeast corner of the park near Wyoming. In Wyoming, by the way. Yeah, Yellowstone is in Montana and Wyoming, just so you know. Well, he arranged to have a boat drive across Yellowstone Lake and drop him off at a point called Terrace Point. Austin was smart. He had also arranged for the boat to pick him up at the same place on September 20th. That was the closest point to the peak, so he figured that that would lower the amount of hiking, etc. He was right. He planned it well. Well, it's 6 miles from Yellowstone Lake, where he was dropped off, to Eagle Peak. Air miles, but it's a strenuous hike all the way through. Now, the place he was going, Eagle Peak, is located in the Absaroka mountain range, has an elevation of 11,372 feet, and is the highest point in Yellowstone National Park. It's located in the Shoshone National Forest, and several hiking locations say it's a 15-mile hike from any park road. And while you're hiking, you could run into grizzly, black bear, elk, moose, deer, and bighorn sheep. A company called Scenic Safaris of Yellowstone state that, quote, most expert hikers don't recommend hiking the peak itself. They didn't say why, but it stated that. Well, a couple of things. In the description, it said you could run into moose. Well, moose can be, on occasion, as dangerous as a grizzly bear. If you hit them at the right time, say during a rut or during a time they're injured or something along those lines, they will stomp you to death. And you got to be really careful. And I'm serious about this. See a moose, you give them their ground, you back off, and you don't mess with them. So Austin gets the ride, gets dropped off at the lake, on the shore of the lake. So all of this is Yellowstone National Park. All this. This is Yellowstone Lake. It's a huge lake. Well, he gets a ride through the lake, down into the arm, and he gets dropped off at this little point right here. And then he starts hiking. This is Eagle Peak. He starts hiking 6 miles, but he goes off course. We know he went off course because he stopped at a place called Howell Creek. Walked around, down, and through. Well, how do we know he went to Howell Creek? Well, that's a good question. Why he broke from his route? It was completely unexplained. But he stopped at the Howell Creek backcountry cabin. Now, backcountry cabin, in this instance, had a ranger there full-time during the summer months. These backcountry rangers have a great job. They just deal with backcountry issues. They don't go in to the main park. They stay out at this cabin in the middle of nowhere all summer. Talk to campers, respond to emergencies in those areas. They carry a sat phone, etc. Well, he stopped in, spoke to the ranger, and he told the ranger that he was going to make his camp just around the corner for the night and use that there as a step-off point to the peak. The place he was stopping at was called 6D as in David, 6D8. It was a campsite right near the hut. Now, he was in a very remote location of Yellowstone, in the southeast region of the park, and it is still unknown why he went off his route that he had planned. So he establishes camp, goes to sleep. The next morning, it's theorized, unknown, if he got up early and headed toward his primary destination, which was Eagle Peak. Now here's a little lesson for everybody. When you're climbing a big mountain, anything over 10, 11,000 feet, that's in the middle of nowhere, you get up really early in the morning and you take off, and you want to be on that mountain by noon, 1 o'clock at the latest, 2 o'clock at the very latest. 2 o'clock you want off that mountain and back headed home. And why is that? Because the weather changes at high elevation very quickly. When that weather changes, it can make coming down way more dangerous than going up. And by changing weather, snow, sleet, hail, wind, rain, and the longer you wait, the less daylight you have to get down. Now, in that area of the park, it's pretty far north, but it'll stay fairly light to near 10 o'clock. Keep that in mind. So Austin went to the peak, and at 7 o'clock he made 2 phone calls. Called one to his family in Winona, told them, hey, I summited the peak, I'm good. The weather's a little crappy right now. I'm getting rain, sleet, and fog, so I'm going to be headed down soon. Then he calls one more friend, I don't know who, says the same thing. So they established that Austin made it to the top of Eagle Peak, called on his cell, and talked to 2 people. Here's the problem. It was 7 o'clock at night. That is scary late. Very scary. I've never known anybody to climb any mountain and summit that late. I don't know why he got there that late, but now he's got limited visibility to get back down that mountain. Limited visibility because shadows and dangerous conditions, rain, sleet, and fog. Fog's a two-way street. You can't see the predators, and the predators can't see you until you're already on them. But he starts down the mountain, and he's heading back to the camp right near the backcountry ranger. Now, as it's getting dark, big shadows on the mountain. It's always, always, always more difficult going downhill than uphill. Well, why, Dave? Downhill seems easier. Yeah, it would seem that way, but a couple of things. You're ultra tired. You've been climbing all day. Now you're going down. It's cold. Shadows, rain, sleet, fog. You're cold. You usually do not have the resources that you had going up. Full pail of water, snacks, food. Well, Austin started down. What happened after he made those phone calls is a true mystery. And I mean that wholeheartedly because no one heard from him after that. September 20th, 3 days after everyone heard from him, his parents and his friend, he's scheduled to meet the boat back at the same location on Yellowstone Lake. He didn't make it. The boat captain waited and waited and waited and finally pulled away. He calls the Yellowstone Interagency Communications Center, and that is the comm center for all emergency services out of Yellowstone. And he notifies them that he has a hiker that's late and possibly missing. Gives them the details. Interagency Communications contacts the National Park Service Police. They're given the information of a possible missing person. And the National Park Police goes through the process of trying to identify what happened here. Well, one of the first things they do is they'd contact Xanterra to see if Austin showed up early and somehow walked out of the park and is back to work. Is his truck parked there? Has he worked? No. Okay. Then they contact his emergency contact through Xanterra. That's his parents. Have his parents heard from him? Well, we heard from him on the 17th and haven't heard from him since. Okay. They confirmed he hadn't exited the woods. Now the National Park Police job is to organize a search and rescue for Austin. This is no small job, folks. They know he was on the top of the mountain. They know where he was headed towards his camp. And you could presume that he's in between both those spots. So this is Howell Creek, where he established camp. The peak is right here. Now, it's probably close to a 12, 14-hour hike up. It's a brutal hike. And like that one outfit explained, it's not a location they'd recommend summiting to. So the National Park Service starts organizing resources to look for Austin. They first contact the Grand Teton National Parks for assistance, and they get it. They also contacted Park County, Wyoming for additional search and rescue assistance. They get it. So they knew where Austin was located. They contact the backcountry ranger at the creek where his camp was. And that first day they go out and they find Austin's camp. He wasn't there. And they're fairly positive he never made it back off that mountain to that camp, because he would have picked up his things and hiked towards the lake. So everything is still at his camp. This was a good start. Why do I say that? Because it gives search and rescue a scent profile to go with. What do I mean by that? Well, all of his camping stuff's there, socks, pillow, sleeping bag, all good things for canines to pick a scent up on what he smells like. So they get the scent objects and they put out a notification and they put up flyers of Austin. And they said, hey, if there's anybody traveling in the peak area or near the creek or around Yellowstone Lake, please call us. And they give a phone number. And they want to know if you were there between the 14th and the 17th of September. And they start searching. Now, searching something like this is brutal. First of all, your head's on a swivel because you're looking for somebody, but your head's also on a swivel because you got wildlife all around you that can kill you. So they put 2 helicopters in the air. They start ferrying people from ground level up to the top of the peak, coming down looking for Austin. They put in canines around his campground, trying to find a scent trail where he left, where he might have come in from. They bring in professional trackers. One of the rare times I've seen them do this, which is good. And they're looking for tracks leaving the site or maybe coming to the site. Well, that was on September 21st that they started. On the 23rd, Austin's parents arrived from Minnesota, on or about right that date. And they were housed at the Lake Hotel at Yellowstone Lake, about 10 minutes from the search and rescue headquarters. The Park Service got special permission to use drones. You say, special permission, Dave? I know, it sounds weird. But drones cannot be used in a national park, even for searches, unless you have approval from Washington, D.C. I know, it's bureaucratic bunk, but they have to do it. I've personally talked to National Park Police, and they said, yeah, we have been denied it on cases in the past. Apparently in this case they got it. So they put drones up. 100 ground pounders, search dogs, and they're searching 12, 14 hours a day. September 25th, Austin's dad talked to the press and said that he was told that they were going to transition from searching to now a recovery mission, which means that instead of searching for a live person, they're now searching for a dead person. Well, his dad said this, and then all of a sudden the National Park Service came back and said, no, that's not true. We're still searching for a live person, and we're searching hard. Okay. NPS also stated that they had not found anything to indicate where Austin may be or where he was going other than back to his camp. So they're searching now, and they're up to the 10th day of the search. Searchers, whether you're in the air, or in a drone, or you're on foot, they carry GPS transmitters. They want to see what ground was covered, what ground was not covered. What ground was covered by the air, helicopters and drones, what was covered by ground pounders. And then they develop a map of what was and wasn't covered. This is the map they put out to the public, and I want everyone to know about this. So all the red are ground teams. The blue, all this area in here, are helicopter crewed teams. Now you may think, well, why didn't they cover this open area? Well, it's cliffs. Couldn't get there. Now they covered the area obviously at the bottom of the cliffs. No reason to cover the side of the cliffs or to fly over it because nobody's on it. But you can see the National Park Service did a good job covering this area. They floated everything in here multiple times. Now this helps them to understand what's happening. Now the black that you see here, that's drones that they put up. Now many times, what they'll do is they'll take high definition 4K video by drone. And then they'll take it, they'll bring it down, they'll bring it to headquarters, and they'll put it up on a giant screen, and they'll play it. And they have different people watching different quadrants of that screen, and they're looking for anything suspicious. And you may think, oh, that's kind of archaic. Yeah, that's the way search and rescue is. That drone can get to areas that people maybe can't, side of a mountain, something like that. So having a drone is important. And the idea of not using a drone is idiotic. A drone gives you a permanent look, because it's recorded, of what it sees. So, October 2nd, the National Park Service now comes out with a new statement. It said that they would be limited to a recovery search at this time. And they outlined their effort to find Austin. They stated that it was 11-day search and rescue. Standard these days is probably 7 or 8 days. Why give Austin 11? There's a good rationale behind this, and I agree with them. Austin was in fantastic physical condition. He was young, he was resilient. He could put on many miles more than I could. And he could probably live under far worse conditions than maybe you could. So his profile said that they would search probably till 10 or 11 days based on his ability to survive. Now they said that 11 days they used 100 personnel, multiple search and rescue dogs, multiple drone searches. They covered 3,225 miles searched by air and ground. The search elevations went from 8,400 feet to 11,350 feet. They didn't find any animal predation. Now, if a relative of Austin's is watching, I am not attacking Austin in one bit. But it's important that we all learn from things like this. First of all, what did Austin do right? He told somebody somewhere that he was going to go on this hike. He told somebody somewhere the route he was taking, and he prearranged for somebody to pick him up. That's all good. You've got to tell people where you're going. He obviously had a cell phone. That's good. Now, did he have a search or a cell phone that had a personal locator beacon in it? I don't know. Most of the new cell phones do. A lot of people are hiking right now with cell phones in the wild. They don't even know they have a personal locator beacon built into it. He didn't have a sat phone. A sat phone is a phone that can be used in the middle of the wilderness. Cell phones that have personal locator beacon, they don't have a sat phone. They just have a beacon. You can activate it and it'll send out a signal that you need help. It doesn't say anything more. The most important thing, a hiking partner. He didn't have one. Now maybe he tried to find somebody to go with him and he couldn't. But under these conditions, summiting a mountain that's recommended not to summit, coming down at the mountain off at 7 p.m., it's a recipe for disaster, folks. Also, if you're going to lay out a course, stay on the course. Because if something happens to you when you're off course, good chance are you'll never be found. It's not a good sign that Austin wasn't found. I always think about the ride that the relatives have going home, knowing that their son isn't there, hasn't been found. That ride must really play games with your head. So that's Austin King. I want to make one more statement. A couple days ago was the 25th anniversary of the disappearance of Jared Attadero. Jared was a young boy, 3 years old, that disappeared in the mountains of Colorado, just outside of Rocky Mountain National Park. He was found years later, remnants of him, very suspiciously. The sheriff said that he died of a mountain lion attack. He didn't die of a mountain lion attack. I first met his dad, Alan, when we both lived and worked in essentially the same town in Colorado. That was the first of many coincidences between Alan and I. We went over the details I could find and the details he had. And that started a friendship with one of the nicest men I've ever met. A man of deep faith. I call Alan every anniversary. And you know what? He calls me on Ben's anniversary of his death. Well, Ben and I worked on our first film with Alan to chronicle what happened to Jared in Missing 411. You can watch it on Tubi right now, Missing 411. We never really got to any solid answers on what happened to Jared. Alan called in mountain lion experts, and they said definitely it was not a mountain lion that killed your son. Even though his remains were found hundreds of feet above a trail, up a cliff, up a trail. No 3-year-old boy could get up there. No. And no mountain lion took him up there. And no bear took him up there. Just, his clothes were found, no blood on his clothes. That case will haunt me till I die. I wish I understood what happened there. And I know Alan does too. If you ever get a chance to meet Alan Atadero, he's one of the kindest, most gentle people you'll ever know. And Alan, my prayers are always with you and your family, and Debbie, and Jocelyn. I thank you guys for being here. Each of you is greatly appreciated for watching me. Thank you. And remember to be kind. Kindness costs nothing. Just a smile can change somebody's day. Paulides out.